Thanks for joining me on these videos. We're dealing with a number of ethical issues. We've been talking about marriage, and we've come to this question of arguments about marriage from reason and experience apart from the Bible. So another video I dealt with what the Bible teaches. But we know that government should define and establish marriage because no other institution can do that for an entire society. So without a definition of marriage, chaos and much oppression of women and children will result. So there'll be an increase in incest and polygamy and fornication. Without plans for commitment to the women or children, all those things will occur. The history of the Western world has recognized the wisdom in governments defining marriage. Even Aristotle spoke against this. He wasn't a believer. Marriage law creates and forces others to recognize a certain kind of union, permanent, faithful, co-residential, and sexual couplings. Government should encourage and reward marriage between one man and one woman because it gives benefits to society that no other relationship or institution can give. Even the United States, their government defined marriage for Utah in 1896, saying that you can't be a polygamous relationship. And Utah wanted to join the Union. They didn't want to keep fighting against it, and so they had to give up those laws. So when government encourages these things, it includes that marriage provides a better environment for having babies than any other relationship or institution. There's greater security and commitment from the parents. Married couples raise and nurture children far better than any other human relationship or institution. And that shouldn't be surprising. Children who live with their own two married parents have significantly higher educational achievement. Children who live with their own two married parents are much more likely to enjoy a better economic standard in their adult lives and are much less likely to end up in poverty. Children who live with their own two married parents have much better physical health and emotional health. Children who live with their own two married parents are far less likely to commit crimes. They're less likely to engage in alcohol and substance abuse and are more likely to live according to higher standards of integrity and moral principles. Children who live with their own two married parents are less likely to experience physical abuse and more likely to live in homes that provide support, protection, and stability for them. And then children who live with their own two married parents are more likely to establish stable families in the next generation. We also know that marriage provides a guarantee of lifelong companionship and care far better than any other human relationship or institution. Marriage also leads to a higher economic standard, diminished likelihood of ending up in poverty for men and women. When they're married together, they tend to work harder because they realize they have one another to take care of. And then if God gives them kids, they got kids to take care of. So that's just a better situation all the way around. Marriage provides women with protection against domestic violence and abandonment far better than any other human relationship or institution because they have someone there protecting them in their lives, their husbands. Marriage encourages men to socially beneficial pursuits far better than any other human relationship or institution. Socially, men, when they're married, relate to others better and more wholesome than what they might do if they weren't, and some of the ways they might live their lives. Men and women in general have an innate instinct that values sexual faithfulness in intimate relationships, and marriage provides a societal encouragement of such faithfulness far better than any other relationship or institution. We also see that marriage provides greater protection against sexually transmitted diseases than any other relationship or institution because they're faithful to each other and they don't have to worry about bringing things in from other partners. And the biological design of men and women's bodies argues that sexual intimacy is designed to be enjoyed between only one man and one woman, which leads to some problems in terms of the homosexual pursuit of such happiness. Well, there are also legal arguments about marriage that can be made. We know in the United States, appeals courts have repeatedly held that the state has a legitimate interest in protecting marriage between one man and one woman, and why they don't just let one man marry as many women as he wants, and so forth. There's no right to polygamous marriages found in the U.S. Constitution. There's no right to homosexual marriage found in the Constitution. We know that over 30 states have passed laws against homosexual marriage or have done so in recent years. Restricting marriage to one man and one woman does not violate anyone's fundamental rights. Everyone has always had the same rights up until recent years when they started arguing, well, we don't have the same rights. They still have the same rights. They shouldn't have the same rights in a marital relationship for homosexuals. A marriage amendment to the U.S. Constitution would be the most effective way to establish a uniform understanding of marriage, once again in the United States and other countries where they're dealing with these issues, is get it as an amendment so that the whole federal government has to uphold it. Well, there are some objections to this. Christians should not try to impose their moral standards on the rest of society. It's a common objection. Well, attempting to persuade people that these moral standards are right and beneficial to society is not the same as imposing them on others. And the Bible presents these standards for marriage not as merely Christian standards, but as standards that come from the one true God, the creator of the universe, who wants societies to function well, whether the people that are married within those societies are believers or not. Obviously, he wants them to become believers, but if they're not, he still wants a good functioning society. So what about recommendations about specific laws and policies related to marriage? Well, number one, marriage should continue to be defined by government for society as a whole. Number two, laws should define marriage as a union between one man and one woman. Number three, laws should make other restrictions on marriages that reflect historical and traditional standards, like a minimum age, let's say 18, non-polygamous, non-incestuous. So there's actually laws about marriage that you just can't get married at age 15, or you can't be involved in an incestuous relationship. Number four, homosexual relationships should not be granted the status of marriage. It goes against what God has always said in His Word, and it goes against the history of the world up into the last few decades. It is doubtful that domestic partner benefits should be given to homosexual relationships, or they should be normalized in any way as civil unions. If a society decides to extend benefits to homosexual domestic partners, then all people living together in long-term relationships where there is mutual commitment and obligation to care and support each other could receive such benefits, such as elderly siblings that live together over a number of years, elderly parent cared for by their children, and more. Objections to giving monetary benefits to same-sex relationships. These benefits were originally intended by society to encourage the bearing and raising of children in a heterosexual marriage, which is the only kind of sexual union that can produce children. To give such benefits to homosexual relationships, which by themselves cannot produce new children, becomes a means by which society encourages other types of relationships that will not ordinarily produce children and will not raise them in the most beneficial way. So it's not helping society impact the next generation in a positive way. Such benefits also confer a societal indication of approval on the relationships. But Christians should not support policies that give approval to relationships that the Bible disapproves of and considers morally wrong, like a homosexual union. We could also say that non-homosexuals should continue to be prohibited from military service because it negatively affects morale. And if one person's in a loving relationship with another soldier, they're going to protect that one more than they're going to protect the others. Just like why women shouldn't be on the front of the combat lines, because a man by nature is going to want to help protect the weaker vessel, the woman, and could put the rest of the unit in harm's way in that kind of scenario. Private organizations such as the Boy Scout of Americans should not should exclude homosexuals from employment as scoutmasters, and that's just basic common sense. There's too many scenarios where they wind up abusing other younger boys because they're in a more of authoritative, domineering function. Should homosexuals be granted the legal status of a protected class? No, because it gives government approval, which affects what others eventually consider right morally. Should homosexual conduct itself be against the law? Not if they are not going to be enforced. If you're not going to enforce the laws, no point in having the laws. Or if it lends itself to governmental intrusion in citizens' private lives. I'll say more on these issues related to marriage and related sexual expressions in the next video.